Last week we discussed a very important, very critical concept. That is the Nekudat Tzaddik, the point of the Tzaddik with which we need to have connection, attachment, to draw sustenance and nourishment from that special, unique point of godliness. This point of godliness that we said is found within the Tzaddik of the generation, which in this case, we're deriving that sustenance from Rabbi Nachman. And then we also discussed the nekudat of the tzaddik within your friend, that every time that you speak to your friend about trying to come closer to Hashem, your personal experiences, your struggles, your achievements, all of that is connecting to and drawing from the point of the tzaddik within your friend, which he has in a greater abundance than you have, and that is the impetus for yearning to do so on a daily basis, along with learning the teachings of the tzaddik of the generation. And finally, there was this final point of the tzaddik, which in some ways is the most essential for our generation, and that is the point of the tzaddik within yourself. And this, Rabbi Nachman says, one attaches to, connects to, illuminates this point through hitbodedut, through personal secluded meditation, where he speaks to Hashem like he's his very best friend. And in doing so and pouring forth his heart out to Hashem, he actually illuminates the nekudat of the tzaddik within himself, the point of the tzaddik within himself or herself. And this is the Mishneh Melech, this is the second to the king, who it says that he was very pained over kings being pained. He went to go search for the lost princess, who we know now to be Amunah, belief in Hashem, belief in the fact that he's good, belief in the fact that he loves you, belief in the fact that he yearns for what you can do for him and what you can do for the world. All of that is Amunah, that's all the lost princess, as well as Simcha, joy. The joy that you have in serving Hashem, that Simcha is also the lost princess. So he sees that the king is deeply pained over the fact that that princess is lost. He can't find her. And now we understand that what does that mean within myself? That means that my heart is broken. That broken heart that I feel on a daily basis, that just constant gnawing of feeling unsatiated, of feeling lacking, of feeling unwhole, that breakage of the heart, that is the princess being lost. Why? Because Rabbi Nachman explains in the Kuturan that the point of the Shekhinah is found within the heart. This is described in the Tanya as the Pintel Yid. The point of the Jew is found in the heart. He says in the Tanya that this is even higher than the neshama in the mind. Okay? That is the point of the Jew, which is most essential, which is actually found within the heart of a Jew. Now, because the heart is broken, that point is in exile. And this is what's causing Hashem so much pain, the king so much pain. However, the Mishneh Melech, that is the point of the tzaddik within every person, that point of the tzaddik sees the pain of Hashem, that he has no place to reside, because really his place of habitation is within your heart. And therefore, when he doesn't have a space within your heart, he's not home. He's not able to reveal himself. He has no place to express himself in your life, because he can only be fully expressed through in your heart. So when the tzaddik sees that you are not a fitting vessel to be able to experience Hashem in your life, he then runs after you to try and heal your broken heart. Or within you, the point of the tzaddik within you that is not satisfied with where you're at. You know, why is it that a Jew is always kvetching? Why is a Jew always complaining? Why is a Jew always feeling not satisfied with their life? Whereas you see sometimes people in general, they have like a daily schedule, they have things going a certain way, and they're happy, right? I get up, I work 12 hours a day, I clean dishes in the back of the restaurant, and I'm happy. But you see that a Jew's not happy like that. Why is a Jew not happy with that? Why is it that someone else can be so happy with things just going according beseder, and yet there's always this aching and this gnawing within a Jew that makes him feel something's missing? And the reason is because his heart is broken, because the Shekhinah is in exile for him. And therefore the tzaddik within him is yearning to fix his broken heart. And that is this feeling, and then you see this expressed even in the secular world by a secular Jew, this compulsion to grow, this compulsion to excel, this compulsion to want to become the highest level of whatever it is that he's doing. That we see that in an inordinate and disproportionate amount of award winners, of visionaries, of people who are par excellence in whatever field that they are, that they're Jewish. So what is this like deep yearning to excel, this deep yearning to thrive, this deep yearning to continuously grow, to become masters of whatever it is that they're doing? That is actually the point of the tzaddik within them. And if a person is connected to Hashem, that expresses itself through wanting to grow closer and closer spiritually. When he does not know Hashem, right? So that has to manifest some way. So it manifests within their job, right? It manifests within their work. But every single Jew has this deep gnawing to grow spiritually. And the reason is because it's that growth which allows the heart to heal. So that's the point of the tzaddik, right? So that's what we spoke about last week. And now Rabbi Nachman says like this. Vayah holech ana v'ana zman rav. Again, he brings it up. He's walking from place to place for a long time. He says zman rav again. And he adds now. Uvamidbariot, uvasadot, uviarim. He's traveling in deserts, in fields, and in forests. Vayamivaksha zman rav ma'od. He was searching for her a very long time. Again, a third time he says it. We spoke 2 weeks ago about this essential point that finding the princess, meaning achieving emunah in one's life, belief in Hashem, belief in the Torah, belief in true tzaddikim, belief in oneself, as well as simcha, joy. This takes a very long time. And now he's saying it 2 times more. And not only is he saying it 2 times more, but he has to traverse through every type of terrain that there is. He has to go through fields, he has to go through forests, he has to go through mountains, he has to go through deserts, he has to go through every type of physical terrain. And now we have to understand, why is he holech, right? It says he walks from place to place. How come he is not sitting in the field? How come he's not sitting in the forest? How come he's not sitting in the desert? So the Perush here explains that it's holech daika. He's walking, he's going specifically. Because when a person wants to come close to Hashem, he wants to find emunah in his life. The key to this is movement, motion. Because the concept of motion is the concept of arousal. Because when a person he falls into the concept of deserts, of fields, of forests, he falls in his mind. He's not standing erect anymore. His head is down in despair. He has yeyush. He feels overwhelmed. He feels confused. He feels that he can't do this. Ein lo koach v'cheshek lasat klum. To the extent that he has no strength to do anything. And even when he does it, he literally has no yearning for it. He has no desire for it. He has no yearning that's deeply propelling him and compelling him to want to move. And connected this, he needs to strengthen himself and begin walking. To do whatever it is that he can. You know, it's a fascinating thing that in modern psychology, the first thing that they have a person do who struggles with depression, we know one of the symptoms of depression, of yeyush, of sadness, of despair, is a lack of movement. It's literally one of the symptoms that they have in the criteria of depression. That the therapist is going to have them, encourage them, that even though they don't feel like it, they don't feel like moving, they force themselves to move anyway. And by forcing themselves to move anyway, as a result of that, they will begin to feel what they're doing. And this is a big chiddush in the psychological world, because we always think to ourselves, when I feel good, I'm going to act good. However, they found out that in psychology, that when you act as if you feel good, even though you don't feel good, it causes you to feel good. Now, while we think that this is an incredible discovery, the truth is Rabbi Nachman was the first one to say this. Actually, his great-grandfather, the Baal Shem Tov, was the first one to say this. And Rabbi Nachman was the one to really drive it home. That by acting besimcha, by acting with force in what you're doing, despite the fact that you don't feel it, you will come to feel it. You first have to act without feeling. This is something that Rabbi Nachman said at the beginning, and this is alluded to in the story of the lost princess, because v'holech ana ve'ana, he's going from place to place, but the places that he's going to is belief feeling. There's no feeling there. Like we're going to see in a moment, that the concept of a midbar, of a desert, is it's dry. There's no feeling there. And he goes to a field, and a field requires really hard work, and maybe there's more feeling there, but it's still difficult to feel over there. And then all of a sudden he goes to a forest, where there's more feeling there. But still, it's this concept of lack of energy, lack of life force in everything that I do that's driving me crazy, right? I want to be close to Hashem, but I don't feel like doing it. That itself is the exile of the lost princess, and it requires a person to move even though he doesn't feel. And what should he move with? If he's not holding at a high spiritual level, he's not learning Kol Torah Kula, he's not learning all the different aspects of the Torah, he's not busy with meditation and different aspects of praying, and he's not doing the mitzvot at a very high level. He just got off the street and he just decided to put a kippah on his head, or he still hasn't gotten to that point yet. He's still trying to just figure out, should I put on tefillin, should I not put on tefillin? Should I keep Shabbat? Should I not keep Shabbat? I don't really feel like it, right? What should he do? So here's the most encouraging and most freeing thought. Rabbi Nachman says, do whatever you can. If at your point, you can only, let's say, push yourself to keep Shabbat today, but you don't know if in the future you're going to be able to do that anymore, so do what you can now. And just let go of everything else. Whatever it is that you can do, that's where you need to start. Many people, they get frozen, they get paralyzed because they think to themselves about the full spectrum of spiritual life. And they think to themselves, I can never do this. Right? How many people do you know, or maybe you yourself, see people who are quote unquote religious? They see how fully invested their life is in spirituality. And on the one hand, they admire them. They feel a deep reverence for that type of full immersion in spirituality. And on the other hand, they can't ever fully imagine themselves living like that. That I'm not on my phone constantly, that I'm not watching TV every day, that I'm not doing all these things that I've done on a basic level, on a day-to-day basis, just as basically as I eat in food. I don't feel like that's ever going to be me, right? But what's the reason the person feels like that? Because he's thinking much bigger than he needs to. He's trying to eat a much bigger part of the pie than he is capable of eating right now. And he doesn't need to. He doesn't need to do all of those things. He simply needs to do whatever it is that he can do, but he must do that. And this is what Rabbi Nachman is saying, that the beginning of him trying to find the lost princess is to do whatever it is that he can do. You can't even start if you don't do that. That you have to do. Everybody at their own level, whatever it is their concept of movement right now, whatever is their motion. Yesh hiluch shel midbar, whether they are still in the midbar, they're at the level of the desert and they're walking in the desert. V'yesh hiluch bezman shedam besadeh, or whether he has elevated to the level of a field, like we're going to learn in a moment. And now he's not walking anymore in this parched desert. He's actually in a field where there is fruit and there's vegetation and there's trees in that space. Or whether he's elevated even further and he's walking now in the forest. like we're going to explain. But the essence is that he shouldn't rest. The essence is movement. The essence is motion. This world is for moving. The next world is for resting. It says in the Gemara that a Talmid Chacham has no rest in this world. Now, while we think of this as some type of curse, the truth is that everything is about perspective. A person who feels that their mission is so important, that they feel that their self-worth is so vital, not just to themselves, but to the world around them. Their desire to move is not a barrier, and it's not a burden, it's not a weight which is crushing them. They can't wait to move. Why? Because they think that what they're doing is important. Lahavdil, you have athletes like Kobe Bryant, who gets up at 3 a.m. every morning so that he could shoot 1,000 shots even before the rest of the players get on the practice, right? And they see him sweating profusely, thinking maybe he came a few minutes before me, and they don't realize he's been there for hours. How is he getting up after only a few hours to do that? You need tremendous amount of energy to do that. So what we're really learning is the energy is coming from belief in oneself. Because Kobe believed that he was the best player in the world, and what he was doing was the most important thing in the world, he was excited to move. His motion came from his motivation. However, what we're saying is that until we get to the point that we believe that we are truly important, that what we're doing is truly necessary, vital for ourselves and for the whole world around us, we need to move whatever we can as if we were holding in that space. Motion precedes motivation, Rabbi Nachman's teaching. It's an unbelievable thing. Start moving. You don't feel like it, that's normal, that's okay, that's the beginning of it. But you move with whatever it is that you can. But the main thing is to move whatever you can. That you begin to yearn, even if you can't physically move, right? And here is an even deeper chap. You might say to yourself, but I can't get out of my bed. I'm so down, I'm so broken, I can't even begin to move. I want to, and I can't, I still can't. It's like I'm frozen. It's like when you have those lucid dreams and you literally can't get up from your sleep. You're frozen in bed. You cannot move at all. But Rabbi Nachman says, but you can yearn. You can want to move. You can want to move. And that itself is motion. But there needs to be motion. Even if I'm incapacitated, I cannot function, but I yearn to. I can't tell you how many years I was depressed, bedridden, incapable of getting up from bed, crying every day in my bed, thinking to myself about how much of an albatross my life is, how much of a failure I am, how broken I am, how this is worst case scenario of how my life could have turned out. Even though I have so many blessings in my life, and yet I feel so depressed. But Rabbi Nachman's teachings were getting me, even in my bed, to yearn in my bed, to cry to Hashem, Hashem, please, I want to get out of bed. I want to. Or even if I don't want to, I want to get out of bed. I want, but there needs to be motion. You need to start to move, even within your own mind, even within your own heart, even if you can't physically move yet. But whatever it is that you can do, you must move. Tidiber katzat, even if you can only say a little bit in your hibodedut, you can't really fully express yourself yet. You can only say a little bit. Hashem, that's all I could say. But you have to say that. Ribono shel olam, master of the world. If that's all you could say, just say it. You can't even say that. You can just krechs. So do it. You have to do it. If that's all you can do that. You can't do that, scream. But you have to do whatever it is that you can do. And no, says the Perush, that's the beginning of Yeshua for you. It's an unbelievable thing. That's the beginning of salvation for you. The beginning of redemption for you is motion, movement. And don't think to yourself, but this is such a small level, this is so low, I'm not doing anything. Nothing in your life is about you compared to this grand plan in your mind. Nothing in your life is based on that. Everything is based on where you're at right now. That is the world. That is life. If I am incapable of moving physically, if it's hard for me to speak to Hashem, if it's hard for me to say anything, and I say a little bit, that is like a person who spends an hour doing Hibodedut every day and he pushes it to 2 hours. Everything is dependent on that person, where they're holding at that level. This is what the Tanya explains, like we spoke about before, that a person is judged based on where they're at, not based in comparison to anybody else. So for you, if it's hard for you to do something and you push yourself a little bit more than where you're at, that is like a person who's doing it day and night, and he has taken on himself to sleep 1 hour less so he can wake up for Chatzot at midnight after 3 hours of sleep. That could be for you, you just do that, right? Whereas before you just didn't do anything. But what does the symbolize? On a very deep level, there's hope. If I'm moving, it means I believe. This is a very deep thing. If I move, it's because I believe. When I get out of bed in the morning, why am I getting out of bed in the morning? Because I believe it's better than if I continue sleeping. If I do not believe it's better than for me to continue sleeping, I won't get out of bed. Because motion implies emunah, belief. To the extent that Rabbi Nachman teaches in Likutei Moharan, that the more emunah a person has, the siman, the sign of this, is his level of zrizut, his level of alacrity, his level and propensity for motion. It said about Rabbi Nachman, he was constantly walking back and forth, pacing back and forth, even when he wasn't doing anything. Why? Because he had such emunah. He has to move. There has to be motion. Constant motion for him. He even suggests this, that if you're alone in your house, pace back and forth in your house is very good. Or let's say, for instance, you're doing mundane things. Rabbi Nachman says it's very good to have a song playing in your head. Why? Because motion. Because the concept of motion is the concept of emunah. It's a very deep thing. So even if you feel like you don't believe, you're struggling with your emunah, start moving. Start moving. Start moving. Whatever you can. Even if that just means yearning. Even if I can't physically move. But I want to move. That want to is motion. I have broken free from my stagnation. You need to make that first step. When I move, you move, just like that. I don't know if you guys remember that song. It was a terrible song from years ago. But they played it at all the bar mitzvahs, okay? So, same thing here. If you want Hashem to move closer to you, you need to take the first step. And the first step can literally be wanting Him. I want this. Or let's say you don't even want Hashem, but you want Hashem. So you have to do it. Because there's no way for Hashem, so to speak, to make a step close to you without you making a step to Him. And this is the secret of the pasuk that says, return to me and I'm going to return to you, right? Like we know that Elul is coming up. Ani ledodi, ledodi li. I am for my beloved is for me. And we know that this whole month is revolving around the secret of Teshuvah, which is the whole story of the lost princess. Running and returning, finding Hashem in one's life, finding joy in one's life. It requires Teshuvah, which we now know means the ability to run when I feel good, close to Hashem, and to hold on when I'm struggling. But even that holding on requires a motion of holding on, because it's hard to hold on. So that's even motion for you, but it always requires some type of movement or motion. And it's no coincidence that says, I am to my beloved and my beloved is to me. That is the acronym Elul. And Rabbi Nachman teaches that all of the secrets of Elul are in that 6th Torah, Likutei Moharan, the concept of running and returning. Why? Because we're learning that the ledodi to run close to Hashem requires that you make the first step. You need to move a step to Him, and Hashem could then move a step to you. Ani ledodi, ledodi li. I am to my beloved and my beloved is to me. People wonder all the time, why is it that Hashem only revealed Himself to Abraham? Why is it that for so many generations you had people that did not experience Hashem in their life? What was so special about Abraham that Hashem moved towards Abraham? And the answer is that Abraham moved towards him. Because Abraham was motioning himself to try and find a deeper reality in his life, to find a deeper truth, to try to find Hashem in his life, now Hashem, so to speak, has the ability to move towards him. And this is the beginning and the key to teshuvah. To move, motion. To do whatever it is that you can do at that given moment. And how do you have to start? You start in a midbar, you start in the desert. Humakom yavesh ma'od, and this is a very dry place. Bli mayim, it has no water there. V'chom kupach v'makeh et rosho. The sun there is scorching your head. You're dry. V'sham nimtzim chiyut ra'ot, and on top of that, you have these wild animals in the desert. V'nachashim, you have snakes there. Ukravim, and you have scorpions there. You know, it's fascinating because this whole past class we learned about the Mishneh Melech, the second to the king, who goes to search for the lost princess, who we now know is the point of the tzaddik inside of you. But we're learning that for him to even begin to find the lost princess, he needs to walk in a midbar, in a desert. And what is a desert? A desert is a place that's so dry. There's no feeling there. There's no chiyut there. There's no life force there. There's wild animals there, deadly animals there, scorpions and snakes. Now, how fascinating is it that Yaakov Avinu tells Yosef a tzaddik, the archetypal tzaddik, who we learned about in this last lesson, is the point of the tzaddik within you, is the point of the tzaddik within your friend, and is the tzaddik of the generation. He's the concept of Yosef. And Yaakov, we know, according to Kabbalah, according to the Zohar, represents Hashem within the story of Yosef and the brothers. So Yaakov tells Yosef, meaning Hashem tells the Mishneh Melech, the second to the king, go find your brothers, meaning the Shekhinah. Go elevate the godly spark within all of your brothers. Bring them back to me, because they've fallen far from me. And he sends Yosef the tzaddik to go do so. And what happens when they see him? They throw him into a pit. And it says that the pit was rake. It was empty. Ein mayim, there's no water there. So the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat, Chaf Bet, Amud Aleph, says, I don't understand. It says that the pit is empty. So if the pit is empty, it's mashma, it's implicit, there's no water. Why do we need to know that's empty and there's no water? It's already understood. So the Gemara ends up saying out from there that the fact that it's empty is only specifically in regards to water. However, in regards to snakes and scorpions, that's there in the pit. Okay? And we know that water, mayim, is the concept of hydration, meaning it's a dry place. So when the tzaddik goes to save the Jewish people, meaning to save the Shekhinah from exile, found within his brothers, that point of the tzaddik, whether it's in the tzaddik of the generation or within yourself, it needs to first be placed in this pit that's dry. And not only that, there's deadly animals there. It's dry, there's no water there, it's parched. That's the beginning of the exile of the Shekhinah, of the tzaddik. This is the concept of what has to pass over a person in the time that the daughter of the king has been lost, has been exiled, meaning a person's emunah. Shetorah v'tefillah shelo yavashim. Their Torah learning is dry. Their tefillah is dry. Bli shum chiyut, there's no life force there. He has no desire for things that are considered holy. You know, I remember myself in the beginning, like, I wanted Hashem, but I didn't want to learn. I didn't want to pray. I didn't want to keep the mitzvot. I didn't want to do all of these things. I just wanted Hashem. Because that's the beginning. That's the desert. And then everything just feels hard. Everything feels onerous. Everything feels dry. And many people just cap out at this point thinking something's wrong. But the real truth is that the nakuda of the tzaddik, the point of the tzaddik within you, must be roused first within the desert. It must be in this place of dryness. And we see as well that the Jewish people were in Mitzrayim. We also had to go through a desert as well before we could receive the Torah. We needed to go through a state of dryness first. So one of the depths to all of this is that having emunah in one's life is a birth process, Rabbi Nachman explains. Emunah is a birthing. It's not like truth that it exists from the beginning until the end and it doesn't change. Emunah is given birth to. And birth takes place in stages. The first stage of a woman trying to give birth is one of pain, feeling of nausea, feeling of confusion, starting to lack energy, starting to feel sleepy, not wanting to do anything. And it's no surprise that the beginning of the spiritual journey is that as well. It's an incredible thing. And that doesn't mean something's wrong. That is the first stage of giving birth. Me'idach gisa, and on top of this, that shouldn't be enough, that everything is dry for me. You have these wild animals there, these deadly animals. Hemidot v'ta'avot ra'ot. And this is reflective of one's negative emotional qualities and his taivas, his physical desires for things that are divorced from spirituality. V'sham ikar hiluchu. That's the essence of his motion. Yitchazek l'sha'ar al mikomo. To strengthen himself, to remain in his place. L'shevet b'petach ha'ohel kadosh. That even though everything is dry, even though he still struggles with anger and sadness, and he still yearns for honor, and he still yearns for wealth, and he still yearns for the pleasure of sex and for food, he still yearns for every type of physicality. So he has this double quandary going on. It's just brutal. I want Hashem, I realize He exists, Baruch Hashem, thank God. But everything I'm doing is so dry, I mamish feel like earthenware. And on top of that, I didn't even care before that I was an angry person. Everybody's angry. I didn't care before that I struggle with sadness. Everyone's getting therapy. I didn't care before that I ate 10 pies of pizza whenever I felt bad. Because that's what people do. I see it in the movies all the time. But now on top of the fact that I'm feeling dry in my trying to feel close to Hashem and doing the mitzvot, I'm learning as well that these things are bringing me further away. These things are not considered kodesh or tahor. So now I'm feeling extra bad about myself. That every time I get angry, I feel bad about the fact that I'm angry. Every time I get sad, I feel bad about the fact that I'm sad. Every time that I struggle with my taivas, my desires for physicality, which are divorced from spirituality, I go into even more yayush about this. Rabbi Nachman says, but the key here is just don't move from your yearning. Even if you're struggling, even if you're dry, even if you're confused in this place. The main thing here is not to leave the tent. To keep yearning. That's the motion in that space. That is the motion within the midbar. It's taught by the Chachamim. Why is it called a midbar? Why is it called the desert? But it comes from the word midavar. Davar means speech. But a desert is a place of no speech. It's a place where even if you screamed on the top of your lungs, nobody would hear you. Because that's what a person feels like in this place. Like they're alone, like they're confused, like even if I scream at the top of the lungs, nobody's listening to me. That's the midbar. I can't speak. When I come to Hippo to do it, I can't even talk, right? I call my friend and cry for hours and hours and hours, and this guy doesn't even care about me. He's like, I'm your boss. I need to go back to work. Please, I would suggest you do the same thing. No, listen, you don't understand what's going on with me. And yet when I come out to talk to Hashem about it, I'm like twirling my hair, I'm picking my nose, I'm picking my ears, like, I don't know what to do, I can't speak. Why can't I speak? The one who's causing all these difficulties, struggles, trials, and tribulations for me, the only one who can actually help me, I can't get the words out. Why? Because the first stage of giving birth to Emunah is to be in a desert, to be in a space that I want to speak and I can't speak. That's why Rabbi Nachman says, even in the beginning, when you first start to talk to Hashem and you can't talk, even just showing up is tremendously beneficial. Why? Because the beginning of giving birth is the motion of wanting even when I can't do. To yearn to be close to Hashem, even if I'm so far from it. The yearning itself is the first stage of birthing Emunah, of birthing Simcha, joy. And I had a thought that maybe this is the whole secret of Yoshua ben Nun. That we know that Yoshua ben Nun is the archetypal disciple, just like we are all trying to be disciples to a great tzaddik. And what does it say about Yoshua ben Nun that made him special? The Chachamim say there was nothing special about him. He wasn't the most charismatic, he wasn't the most brilliant, he wasn't the most anything. There was nothing superlative about this person. The one thing that he did, that he excelled at, was he never left the tent of Moshe. And we know that Moshe represents the home of Kedusha. He's like a living Beit HaMikdash. That when you see the face of the tzaddik, you see the light of Hashem inside this person. He has completely nullified himself to spirituality. He has nothing else besides godliness within him anymore. And Yoshua ben Nun's not like that. But he never leaves him. So that means that even if he's struggling with anger and sadness and confusion, even if he feels no life force in what he's doing, but he does not leave his tent, he does not leave the place of Moshe, he does not leave the Nekuda Tzaddik, he still continues to show up, to try and talk to Hashem, at least to want to when he's there, to show up even if he can't talk. He still talks to his friend about wanting to get close to Hashem, even though he's not doing what he's saying. He still learns the teachings of the tzaddik, even though he feels so far from it, right? Because the beginning of all of this is to be in this desert where everything is dry. That's the beginning of the birth, but the wanting is the key here. That's the motion in the desert. Uvisadot. And if you continuously yearn and you don't give up on this, then you'll have the zchut to elevate to the level of the field. And you'll travel in the field now. This is a higher level, like Rabbi Nachman teaches in the Likutei Moharan, that the concept of one's tefillah or emunah, it needs to elevate from the level of a mountain to the level of a field to the level of a home. Okay, here the order is a little bit different in this story, but the same point comes out. You see that what's the level of a mountain? That was Avram Avinu, Rabbi Nachman teaches in the Likutei Moharan. He said that it saw the mountain from afar, right? And that was the place where Yerushalayim would eventually be, where the Beit HaMikdash would eventually be. And that's the place where he was engaged in his greatest test with his son Yitzchak. And he called it a har, a mountain. Yitzchak Avinu, it said that he was L'suach Chassadeh. He was conversing with Hashem in the field. Oh, you see, Rabbi Nachman didn't make it up. Yitzchak Avinu did Hibodedut. It's explicit in the pasuk. So if anybody asks you, what's this whole fascination? What's your whole obsession with Hibodedut? It's nowhere in the Torah. Just show them. Yitzchak l'suach l'sadeh. How come it doesn't say l'daber? How come it doesn't say he was speaking to Hashem? Why is it l'suach? Siach is a conversation. He was conversing with Hashem. Who do you converse with? Your friend. Okay? And he was doing it in the field. It is a ancestral pastime. It's something our great-great-grandparents did. This is what Rabbi Nachman said. My path is brand new, and yet it's something very ancient. Something our ancestors walked. Okay? Now, why is going into the field an elevation from the mountain? Because the chiddush here is that the field is the same exact place. That the place that Yitzchak called the Sadeh was actually the same place that his father called a mountain. I don't understand. Is it a field or it's a mountain? So the answer is that Yitzchak elevated Emunah more. Because Yitzchak elevated Emunah more, it became closer to his essential self. It became more internalized. So now it became more accessible. Whereas a mountain is only for the elite few, Those people who have divorced themselves completely from the physical world and want nothing to do with mundanity. I can't say it anymore. I haven't been in school in 10 years. Mundanity, hopefully that's a real word. Okay? But what's the concept of a field? Rabbi Nachman teaches in that 10th lesson that a field is more accessible than a mountain, and more people need a field than needs a mountain. So by Yitzchak, Emunah has become elevated. Tefillah has become elevated. It's become more personal, more internalized. And then you have Yaakov Avinu, that he called the very same place that his father called a field, that his grandfather called a mountain. He called this the Bayit, a home. Such a beautiful thing. The same exact place that was called a field and a mountain, he calls, this is my home. This is not a place I have to go to. This is not a place I have to work in. This is the only place I feel safe. This is the only place I feel like myself. This is the place that I feel comfortable, is Emunah. That this is the greatest elevation of Emunah, when it gets to the point that it feels like home. And this is the process of a person who's trying to live with Rabbi Nachman's teachings. In the beginning, it feels like foreign land. It feels like this was made for the tzaddikim of 2,000 years ago. What do you mean, do an hour of ibodah, dude? What do you mean, get up for chatzot in the middle of the night and lament over the Beit HaMikdash? What do you mean, wear a Beinu Tam Tefillin? What do you mean, go to the mikveh? This is crazy. People nowadays don't even do these things. Even religious people don't do these things. This is 2,000 years ago people did these things. But you do it, even without feeling, if you yearn. And what happens after that? You merit to feel it a little bit. You start to taste the sweetness a little bit. Wow, like, I felt better after that Hibodah, dude. I felt some type of like Yishuv Dad. I felt some peace of mind. I felt some clarity there. And when I got up, and I got up early, I kind of felt like, wow, I feel more connected to Hashem. I'm up before everybody gets up. I see the sun rising. It's something so godly. Something so special, to go from darkness to light. You start to taste the sweetness of these things, right? Until you get to the point that literally, mamish, Hibodedut is the sweetest hour of your day. You can't wait for it. You yearn for it. You are literally like chomping at the bit to get to that hour alone by yourself in the field, in the forest, to just be alone talking to Hashem. It's literally like sweetest thing for you. But in the beginning, it's not like that. It's dry. It's totally normal. Who gets to experience it going from dryness to mamish being the sweetest hour? It's the one who doesn't give up on it. The one who does not leave Moshe's tent. That's the one who gets to experience it. And in the sadeh, in the field, there's ilanot, there's trees here. It's machim, Peirot, there's vegetation, there's fruits. V'gam yesh sham avoda. There's something to do here. There's a real avoda here. Shalev mitorer katzaf, because now your heart is aroused a little bit. It's not as dry now. You don't feel as broken now. You still feel broken, but you have some type of inspiration. You have some type of greater energy about what you're doing. You feel some type of greater motivation. You want to learn more now. You want to learn now. Uipalel, kayem mitzvot. You want to do the mitzvot. You want to pray now, whereas before you didn't want to do that. Aval, avodah sham kasha. However, everything is hard. Right? Even though I want to learn now, when I do it, it's hard. Even though I want to pray, when I pray, it's hard. Everything I'm doing is hard. Sheyesh sham harbe boats. Why? Because in a field, even though it's a more elevated place than the desert, because there's vegetation, there's wildlife, there's some real avoda taking place there. There's fruit that's being given birth to in that place. However, on the other hand, there's thorns and there's thistles. There's many thorns in the field. And that thorns is the heaviness of the avoda at this stage. It's hard. But tzarich lavod kasha. Everything that you do is difficult, legadel perot, in order to grow these fruit. It's like you're farming for the first time. You've never done it before. You don't know how to do it. All you know is, I want to farm. Right? Your whole life, you've been busy in the cities. You're on the rat race. You're in the wheel. You're just turning like a monkey. Yeah? Confused. Worried. Trying to get ahead. Trying to do this. Trying to do that. And ultimately, at the end of it, you see that there's no fruit here. Somebody gives you some type of book on Breslov Chassidus, and now you're like yearning to want to serve Hashem. You're yearning to do mitzvot. You're yearning to learn. You're learning to pray. You're yearning to do ibodedut. But even when you're doing it, it's hard. Why? Because there's thorns in the field. There's thorns in the field. And it's not always that there's fruit in the field. There's seasons. The field is seasonal. Sometimes there's fruit, sometimes there's not. Sometimes I feel good, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I feel elevated, sometimes I feel very low. But only the farmer who's in the field, who waits the whole year, he gets to see those fruit develop. So again, this concept of waiting, the last thing that any of us want to do, but we see here that this is the main avoda. That in the first place it's yearning, and now the yearning turns into actual action. But the action that I'm doing is not sweet, it's heavy. So I need to keep going, and I need to wait in this space. Vayarim, until I get to the point that I elevate to the place of the forest. That's a higher level. Because in that place, there is an illumination of real God consciousness. Mochin, that is that there's chiyut, there's life force in this place. There's joy in that place. There is real meaning and depth to all that I'm doing in that space. It's not a burden for me to do the mitzvot. I want to because I feel how deep and how meaningful, how much light there is in this, because there's mochin, there's consciousness in this place. Kiyar hu makom be'urim, because it's taught in Kabbalah and Chassidut that the forest is a place of extraction, of clarification, of birurim, which is the whole purpose of our life. Sheyesh bo shnei matzavim, because there's two types of situations that's going on in a forest. Shemitzad echad hu bechina din, because from one side it's the concept of din, of judgment. How is that? Ki ya'ar gematria peshrei dinim. Okay, so the Arizal teaches in the Eitz Chaim that there are, so to speak, these 280 archetypal forces of judgment. 280 forces, spiritual forces, which manifest themselves within concealment of godliness. Okay? Now, he's teaching here, what's the gematria 280? The same as Ya'ar, which is a forest. So on the one hand, we're learning that even the forest, still, when you get to this higher level, there's a lot of negative energy. Why? Because the more that a person grows, the more he needs to have obstacles, which is comparable to his level now. Because when a person grows, his soul grows, so does his Yetzer Hara, the Gemara says. Right? He needs to always have a struggle which is equal and contradistinctive to his level. So at this place, even though he's reached a much higher level, now he has access to be able to elevate lights which have been trapped in this place, but they're trapped within these 280 dinim, which is the gematria of the forest. V'darim bo chiyut ra'ot, and there's still wild animals in that place. Mitzad shnei shekatikanim oto. But from the second side, at least in the forest, you begin to actually rectify these things. Hu nase bechinat Ya'ar Lebanon, which is the concept of the forest of Lebanon. Shemez Beit HaMikdash, because Rabbi Nachman explains that the concept of Lebanon is all alluding to the Beit HaMikdash. Why? Because it comes from the word libunin, which is what? That is leiv, which is the heart. And then you have nun, which is the 50th gate. Leiv nun. But on the other hand, another aspect that's coming out of it is the concept of a whitened mind. It says that mochin in Kabbalah, mochin is drawn down from Lebanon. Lebanon is this place of whiteness, this place of godliness. And that place then comes down, that whiteness trickles down and enters into all of one's darkness, into all of one's lackings. That's the concept of the forest. I've elevated myself to the place that I'm no longer in the desert, where I don't feel anything. I don't even want to do these things. I just yearn to be close to Hashem. But then I actually want, and I actually do the mitzvot. I do the things that Rabbi Nachman says. I'm doing that hour of Hibodedut. I'm doing that going to the mikveh. I'm doing the avoda of getting up early as possible. I'm doing all of these things, but I don't feel chiyut, I don't feel life force from it. That's the field. But if I just wait there and I keep yearning in that place, then eventually I have the zchut to get to the forest. And in that place you have tremendous godly pockets of godliness that are available to you to elevate. But they're all trapped within these 280 dinim. These 280 forces of negative spiritual life force. And it needs to be extracted from that place. And the way one does so is because in the forest there's mochin in that place. There's consciousness that's actually available. You feel the chiyut, the life force, in all of the things that you do when you try to draw closer to Hashem. And there already the Mishneh Melech, the second to the king, is beginning to taste success. Right? When a person gets to the forest, even though he's not out of the forest yet, but still he gets tremendous motivation because he actually feels hatzlacha. He feels success in what he's doing. Why? Because he feels joy in doing what he's doing. He feels sweetness in his hipotadud. He feels sweetness in his wrapping of tefillin. He feels sweetness in his keeping Shabbat. He feels sweetness in all the mitzvot. That is the hatzlacha that he needs to get out of the forest as well. Shalom Ui, that he begins to learn with tremendous zeal and with energy and with force and with fervor. And he prays with kavanah, with intentionality, with energy, with strength, with his body. V'naseh dam chashuv. He's turned himself into literally a very chashuv, very cherished spiritual entity. And now his challenge is the opposite. Because now that he feels good, and he has this attachment, this connection to the Shekhinah, he doesn't feel the need to want to look anymore. There's so many Balei Tshuva that they feel that they found it and they stop searching. I literally spoke to somebody last night that he said, he came up to me and he goes, he showed me like a more classical text of Torah. And he's trying to show me the concept of tshuva from this classical text. And I could see what he's doing. He sees that I'm learning all the Sifrei of Rabbeinu. He's seeing that I'm learning all the teachings of Kabbalah and Chassidut in front of me. This happens with many Ashkenazim, that they become Bal Tshuva, and like the end of their service is Mishnayot and Gemara. That's where it begins and that's where it ends. And they're, even though they have a tremendous, it looks like pride in being menagid anything else, yet secretly, privately, there's this wondering, what is this thing that is Kabbalah? What is that thing that is Chassidus? What is that thing that guy behind me who's praying in the Beit Knesset is seemingly very into it? What is it that this person, that he's learning, and there's this simcha and this joy, he's singing as he's learning? What is this guy on? Even though he might make fun of him, even though he might belittle him, but he's privately wondering in his own heart, what does it feel like to feel sweetness in what I'm doing? What is that? And he showed me this book on tshuva, and then he had me look at it. So I looked at it, I go, oh, this is beautiful, thank you so much, and I gave it back to him. He's like, tell me what this whole thing with Rabbi Nachman is. I go, what do you mean? He goes, I know you want me to just start learning Rabbi Nachman's teaching. I could see like Rabbi Akiva, like a calf, a cow that wants to get to a calf. I see that you mamish want me to pick up the Likutei Moharan and start learning. And what's the whole deal with Rabbi Nachman? You tell me what it is. I want to know. So I told him that Rabbi Nachman says it's asur to get old. You're not allowed to get old. And I said that even though Rabbi Nachman says that you need to be mekel, you need to be lenient when it comes to halakha, right? That means that you keep halakha, but you don't take any stringencies on yourself. Because he said that person will be a sad person, and a sad person can't feel close to Hashem, right? The halakha was never supposed to make you feel that you're incapacitated by it. It was supposed to give you a structure and a space with which you can thrive and grow. So how do you do that? By keeping the Shulchan Aruch, but not more than what it says. Right? This is a big trick of the Yetzer Hara, Rabbi Nachman says. However, I said that while Rabbi Nachman was so lenient when it came to halacha, meaning you keep the bare minimum and not more than that, most of your focus is just focused on being growth-oriented by really connecting and getting closer, right? But he says that getting old is a sur. Like treif, like you're not allowed to eat non-kosher food. You're not allowed to get old. Like you're not allowed to break Shabbat. You're not allowed to get old. So I told him that Rabbi Nachman says that getting old is a sur. And I say it happens many times that a person feels that they figured it out. And because they feel that they figured it out, they actually do not feel the courage, they don't feel the motivation to continue to search more. And Rabbi Nachman says such a thing is absolutely prohibited, to feel that you have figured anything out. Rabbi Nachman once said that the ikar of a true tzaddik is that he makes people feel that those who are very far, that he makes them realize that they're actually very close. And that he shows a person who already thinks he figured it out that he doesn't know anything. It's an unbelievable thing, really, and you can see it. You have a guy who literally is struggling in every area of his life. He's completely broken. He learns the Likutei Moharan. He comes out feeling, Hashem loves me. Hashem is so close to me. Hashem is with me. You have a guy who's been learning. He became Baal Tshuva. He's on fire. He's learning Shas. He's learning Gemara every day. He's learning Mishnayot, right? He's keeping halacha to the T. He's taking every stringency on himself. He's doing all these different things, all these different avodas. He's completely divorced himself from the physical world. And he picks up Likutei Moharan and he's like, oh my gosh, I don't know Hashem at all. I haven't even started. You know, like I had a guy once, I saw him in Uman, and I saw he was saying Tikkun Klali after he prayed Shachrit in the morning. I was visiting Miami to do a class with Gedalia Fenster. A lot of you guys know him. And I saw this guy there and I recognized him from my trip in Hanukkah in Uman. So I said, how did you get into Rabbi Nachman? It's like the best question. You know, I used to be a Dave Matthews Band fan, so it was always like the same thing. Like, oh, how did you feel hear about Dave Matthews? You know, it was like the same thing. And anybody is into Rabbi Nachman, it's like, oh, you know, how did you find that first book? How did you connect? Who was the first person who told you about it? So it's a fascinating. So I asked him, how did he connect? So he told me, like, truth is, I became Baal Tshuva. I realized that Hashem existed, and I did Tshuva. But then as years went on, I found Chassidut. I started to learn about the Baal Shem Tov and his life and his teachings. And I realized that I don't know Hashem at all. And I haven't even begun. And I did Tshuva again. And he said, I finally thought I figured it out. And after a few years, somebody showed me Rabbi Nachman's teachings. And I realized I have not done anything yet. I don't know Hashem at all. And then I really started doing tshuva. And he said, I feel like everybody kind of has this process, right? So even though on the one hand, we want to get to the point that we feel this sweetness from what we're doing, we want to get to the point that we feel connected. But at the same time, once you do so, you need to know there's no limits to how much you can grow. Not to get old. Not to feel like you figured it out. Why? Because in Kabbalah, Hashem is called the Ein Sof, the endless one. Why is that important to us? We know that there is no description of Hashem that even makes sense. There's no description of Hashem that you can make on Hashem. So why is it that the highest term that we give to Hashem is the Ein Sof? Even that is limiting him to say that he has no limit. That's a limitation. Why? Because you described him. But we have to say something about him. So why is that such a high term? To know that there's no limit to how close you can get to him. It's the most beautiful thing. No matter how much you learn, no matter how much you pray, no matter how much you do, no matter where you're holding, there's no limit to how close you can get to him. And this, Rabbi Nachman says, is what makes a Jew a real Jew. He says a real Jew is one who's constantly going from level to level. Because he knows that Hashem has no end. And therefore his ability to get close to him knows no end. And that's the concept of the forest, that he needs to make sure that when he gets to the forest and he starts to experience the sweetness of Rabbi Nachman's avoda, he still knows that I need to go further. And this is what we learned before, that to get close to Hashem, to do tshuva, Ani ledodi li, I'm going to be to my beloved. I'm going to make that first step to Hashem, and then Hashem is going to make a step back to me. I step, you step, right? That in the beginning, it's a process of shov. I'm just holding on. I'm in the desert, and I'm literally just yearning, and I'm not moving, but I'm holding on. I'm not going backwards. And then I have the zchut to get to the field. And even here, even though I'm doing the mitzvot, and I'm doing some of the things that Rabbi Nachman says, but I still don't feel joy from it. It still feels hard for me, right? So in this place, again, I need to be baki b'shov. I need to be expert in holding on. And now, when I have the zchut, the merit to get to the forest, and I actually feel the tremendous sweetness from that hour of Ibodah, I feel the tremendous sweetness from getting up early in the morning. I feel the tremendous sweetness from becoming more kodesh, becoming more tahor. But you can easily fall into a trap in that place to think that you figured it out. And that's just as big of a nisayon as when you were struggling to even feel like you were doing anything. And in that place, you need to become baki baratza. You need to realize you haven't figured out anything yet. And you have to run. You need to run to the next stage, to the next stage. And he ends by saying, "Vaya bevakasha zaman rav tov, rav ma'od." And this search to go from it's so hard for me. Sorry, it's so early for me. To go from the desert to the field to the forest. Zman rav ma'od. It takes a very long time. Why is Rabbeinu HaKadosh, why is the Holy Tzaddik saying again that this is taking a long time? Because it's trying to bring out something very deep. Ayaded nit'orim midot rachamim elyonim. Because one can only elicit the highest revelation of godliness, which is called rachamim elyonim, this transcendent level of empathy, compassion, this transcendent level of rachamim, the level of the keter. Tikuni atik, which is called in Kabbalah the rectification of ancient days. Shem bechinat zikna, it's implying elderliness. What type of elderliness? Bechinat arichot yomim, length of days. Bechinat zman rav, the concept of a long time. So when Rabbi Nachman keeps saying it takes a long time, he's not just alluding to how much time it takes. He's saying the ability to go from level to level to level and to find the lost princess can only be had through Zman Rav. This highest level of godliness, this highest revelation of Hashem's compassion, which is called a long time. The long time, the concept of Zman Rav, is who allows you to be able to get through all of these things. And this is why Rabbi Nachman says that the highest revelation of godliness is called patience, savlanut. And that's why as well, when we got the Torah from Har Sinai, we saw Hashem as an elderly grandfather with a long flowing beard, as opposed to in Mitzrayim when we left there, he looked like a young warrior. Why? Because to receive the Torah, meaning not just to leave behind the secular world, but to actually get chiyut, to get life force, to have simcha, to have joy in doing the mitzvot, to really elevate as a person and to transform. I need the compassion, the infinite compassion of my elderly grandfather. And what's the whole essence of a grandfather as opposed to a young warrior? He's wise. And because he's wise, he's compassionate. Because Rabbi Nachman teaches that compassion is dependent on wisdom. The more wisdom that one has, the more compassionate they are. And we know that Hashem's wisdom is infinite. So therefore his compassion is infinite. That concept of infinite compassion is called Zman Rav, a long time. And therefore it takes a long time to feel the Zman Rav, to feel the long time, meaning to feel Hashem's compassion. So if you knock out before you get to the concept of Zman Rav. If you decide that while you're in the middle of the field, you're in the middle of the forest, you're in the middle of the desert, you say, I can't do this, or this is not going to happen. I'm never going to find the lost princess, and you stop where you're at. You never actually get to see Hashem's compassion in your life, because Hashem's compassion can only be revealed through Zman Rav, a long time. And this is why the whole entire chizik of Rav Natan for us, in all of his writings, in all of his letters, in all of his teachings, in trying to expound his Rebbe's teachings, his main message is chazak. Strengthen yourself and just do not give up. Do not leave the tent of Moshe. If you do not leave the tent of Moshe, even if it takes a long time, through this you will see Hashem's compassion in ways you can't possibly fathom. Zman Rav, hold on, keep going. Whether you feel it, you don't feel it. Whether you're getting life force from it or you dread it. Eventually you're going to get to the point that you have joy from it. And even in that place, then the avoda changes. It's not about holding on. It's about realizing you haven't even started yet and running. And all of this takes Zman Rav to be able to experience the ultimate Zman Rav. The length of days, the ancient of days. And through this he experiences Hashem's compassion and his assistance from above. Does anybody have any questions from today's lesson? Any questions? One second. Okay, first question. Are we supposed to assume that every human... Sorry, I'm not doing this because I'm taking a selfie. I'm just recording this on the camera so that we could have it on video after. Okay, so are we supposed to assume that every human being is initially born brokenhearted, or does it happen to us all later in life? Okay, so actually everybody is born seemingly, superficially whole. However, because he's not actually whole, he then breaks. Everybody goes through this process. Some people it happens when they're 10, like me. Some people it happens when they're 30, right? They had everything, it all worked out, and yet they see at the end of all of it, there's no life force, there's no joy from any of it. And he has his midlife crisis, or his, what do they call it? Third life crisis, okay? And then you have people who are 50 years old, that they see that their kids leave their home, and they're starting their own families. And there's nothing from what they've done in their life. Their kids don't speak to them. They have nothing from work anymore because they have to retire soon. They never really got to the place that they wanted to. And they break then. Sometimes they don't break until they're on their deathbed. And they realize right before they pass away that they wasted their whole life on vanity. Some people, they only get to experience it afterwards. And then they come back again. Okay? But everybody at some point feels that brokenness. Now, even if a person doesn't realize he's broken, that doesn't mean he's not broken. One of the things that Rabbi Nachman does for a person, even though it seems counterintuitive, is he shows you that you're broken. Just like when a person gets married, right? It says that a person's spouse is their Ezer Kenegda, their helper against them. So I don't understand. I thought I'm getting married so that I could have a helper. What does it mean that they're my helper against me? So Rashi says it means that when I'm doing what I need to be doing, they help me. And when I don't, they're against me. However, the deeper secret of this is they help me by being against me. Okay? Now, who would want to sign up for that? Who wants to get married so I can have someone who's constantly contrarian to me? He is disputing everything that I say. He is pushing me in all my buttons. He is causing all of these challenges and difficulties within me to come out. Things that I wasn't struggling with before, now I'm struggling with those things. So the answer is because they're inside of you. And they are your barrier to experiencing Hashem in your life. And by getting married, your spouse, even though it's seemingly paradoxical, by actually causing that friction inside of you, by causing all of those skeletons to come out, they now have to work on those skeletons. And Rabbi Nachman says that when you are attached to a real tzaddik, it's literally like getting married. So what ends up happening, he explains, is that it's like you take a pot, not pot, okay? Rabbi Nachman wasn't a fan. But a pot of soup. You put it on top of a fire. Now, before the soup is on top of the fire, there's no movement. There's no, you don't see any of the negativity. You don't see any of the brokenness in the soup. What happens when you turn the flame on? All of a sudden, you start to see froth come up to the top. So what do? You take it off. You take it off a little bit on top. And then, but you see that when you turn the heat up more, so the soup starts boiling, all the froth starts coming up to the top. All the scum comes up to the top, and you take it all off. When you see that the soup has been fully heated, there's no more scum left, right? So Rabbi Nachman says the same thing when you start to attach yourself to a real tzaddik, you learn his teachings, and you start to apply his advice. You realize that you're actually very far. And that is the healthiest thing you could possibly experience, because now that it's coming up to the top, you can start to work to move it away. Now you might say to yourself, well, before I was fine, and I didn't feel that brokenness, and now I'm just frustrated. So why would I want to do this? So the answer is you weren't fine before. Because when a person is angry, he's not fine. When a person is sad, he's not fine. When a person is jealous, they're not fine. When a person is constantly trying to get attention from everybody else around them, they're not fine. They're broken. They just don't know it. Does that make sense, Julie?
Yes.
Okay. How can we try to identify when we can push ourselves a little harder to do more for Hashem versus when we need to admit we can only do a little more and do that little bit? Is the identification point that we can confidently say, we say that if we do any more for Hashem, we will start to resent it. Not exactly. This is a very challenging thing, and it's all the more so challenging because we don't have Rabbi Nachman to go ask, hey, I'm trying to do this thing that you suggested and I feel like it's a bit much. What do you think I should do? Okay? But this is the concept of having a mashpia. This is why it's so important to have somebody who has been living with these teachings for many years, who has gone through all the ups and downs of trying to bring this into one's life and has seen the sweetness and the fruit and the development, the transformation that comes from it, that you are sharing your experiences with that person, because then they can help guide you based on what you're saying in terms of where you're at, right? Like for instance, Rabbi Nachman says it's a tremendous thing to get up for chatzot, to get up at midnight. There was a person, one of his chasidim, who literally was so committed. He had gotten to the point that he realized like this was the highest avoda. This is what he wanted, and he was going to do whatever he could to do it. But every night that he woke up at midnight, he felt terrible the whole day. He had headaches all day, like actual pounding headaches. And he kept doing it anyway. And his mom found out. It's like any good Jewish mom. She came to Rabbi Nachman, and she said, Rabbeinu, what are you doing to my kid? He has headaches every day from what you're telling him to do. He's literally suffering. He said, I didn't know. Tell your son his midnight is 3 a.m. Now, obviously, for us, this is already much earlier than we usually get up, right? We know midnight is mamish midnight. It's like 12 something in the halachic time. But we see that he was able to go to Rabbi Nachman and to see where he's holding, where he needs. He wasn't saying you don't have to get up at midnight. It just maybe your midnight is at 3 a.m. It might be your midnight is at 5. It might be your midnight is getting up at Shachrit at the last possible time, 9 a.m., while it's still halachically valid. That could be your chatzot. That could be your midnight. So it's not about changing Rabbi Nachman's advice. It's about trying to find out where that advice is for you in your life. And that's why, first of all, it's very important that you speak over to somebody that you trust, that is constantly learning and living with these teachings, about your experiences, so they can try to help guide you. Right? Everybody needs a Rav Natan in addition to Rabbi Nachman. It's not enough to have Rabbi Nachman. Right? Like I heard Rav Chaim Kramer say when I was in Uman. Rabbi Nachman makes you Breslov, and Rav Natan keeps you Breslov. He's not saying like, Rabbi Nachman gets you in the cult and Rav Natan keeps you in the cult. It means that Rabbi Nachman's avoda, even though while it's the most inspirational and it's the most exciting and it's the most elevating and transformational, it's also the hardest. It's the hardest avoda that there is. There is no harder avoda than this. So how do you keep going, and how do you make sure it's healthy and happy for you? You need Rav Natan. That's why Rabbi Nachman said that I don't have any teachings. None of my teachings would exist if not for Rav Natan. He doesn't just mean physical pieces of pages. He means that my teachings would never be able to be accessed without Rav Natan, without the mashpia, without the person who's competent, who's trustworthy, who lives with these teachings, who's faithful, who is not looking for self-aggrandizement. He's not looking for people to attach themselves to him. He's simply your good friend who has reached a certain level in living with Rabbi Nachman's teachings and is trying to help you to do the same. Everybody needs the friend like that. So speak to your friend about that. And when you're in Hipodadut, you need to really beg Hashem and cry to Hashem and ask Hashem. Ask Him, what's too much for me? Is this too much for me? Ask yourself, can I push myself a little bit more? Or am I already like way past the point of pushing myself too much? Because you might have to take a step back, right? You might really have to take a big step back. Because the Torah and the Gemara says that sometimes you need to put the Gemara, sometimes you have to put the Torah down in order to Makayim it. Or like Rabbi Nachman says in the Likutei Moharan, sometimes you need to travel to the land of Israel in order to get to the land of Israel. There's this constant process of, so to speak, journeying and arriving, and you need to speak over to the Nekuda, the Tzaddik that's within you, the point of the Tzaddik within you in your Hipodadut. The key is to mean what you're saying. Meaning, if you say, Hashem, is this too much for me? But you don't really care. You don't really care what the answer is. That's not going to help you. But Rabbi Nachman says, if you really mean what you're saying, you're really, really asking, you're begging Hashem, please, I really want to know because I want what you want. Hashem will show you. He will either show you through what arouses in your heart, through the answer to that question. A lot of times in my Hibodadut, I will have no answer to what I'm struggling with, and I'll be struggling with it throughout the day. And I'll literally cry to Hashem and say, Hashem, please, I just want what you want. I really want this. I'm not asking because I'm looking for a way out. I really just don't know if this is, I can do this. Where am I holding? And I feel literally an answer well up into my heart. Rabbi Nachman says that's Ruach HaKodesh. You're literally experiencing godliness which is emanating from within you. But sometimes you don't see it there, you don't hear it there, but you'll see after you pray like that later in your day, somebody just like places a book in front of you, he's like, yo, you gotta see this. Right? And that guy wasn't even speaking to you before. You had no connection to this person. Yeah? But Hashem has many messengers. He has many ways of bringing you to the answer that you're looking for. But the main thing is to really mean it when you're asking for it. And part of the process, fortunately, unfortunately, is experimenting. Meaning sometimes you're going to have to struggle with doing too much and feeling the weight of that, and then reorienting yourself. Rabbi Nachman says that whenever you want to see if something is beneficial for you, he used to take it on for 3 months. He used to take a certain practice on for 3 months, and then he would go back and he'd say to himself, is this practice helping me? Do I feel more connected because of this? Do I feel more healthy because of this? Do I feel more in tune because of this? Is this too much for me? After 3 months, he would then reorient, and he would either scrap it, or he would either decrease the amount that he was doing it, or he would move further in it, right? But you need to have a process where you're engaging with it to see where you are with it. And it's okay. Meaning, part of the avoda is not catastrophizing. It's something that we spoke a lot about in therapy. But like, let's say, for instance, you had a hard day. You really tried to do what Rabbi Nachman said to you. You literally, for the first time in your whole life, talked to Hashem for a very long time today. Yeah. But then as soon as you're done, you come home and you already have this, your house is a mess, your kids are not listening to you, your wife is mad at you, your husband's upset with you, you feel like just complete confusion and people like, I don't understand. I literally just did what Rabbi Nachman says is the highest possible thing I could possibly do. More than learning, more than davening, more than minyan, more than anything. I spent time alone with you, talking to you. And now I'm struggling. What is that? Right? So, normally, what do? We catastrophize. We go, oh, yeah, I'm such a loser. What's wrong with me? I obviously didn't do it well because otherwise my day wouldn't go like this. And yeah, all of this stuff. Or, no, maybe I did an hour of Hibodedut. I talked to Hashem for a long time today. Baruch Hashem, I did amazing. And now I'm having challenges. And that does not take away the fact that I did something incredible right now. And this day was very hard. But there's tomorrow. I have tomorrow to try again. It's okay. Today I got angry. Tomorrow I can try again. Not, I'm such a loser. Rabbi Nachman wants you to stop doing that. Stop doing that. Stop catastrophizing. Stop associating yourself with struggles that you have. You have struggles. You're not your struggles. Right? You struggled with something, you messed up. Okay, no problem. You just try again. It's okay. You got into a fight with your spouse, even though you literally were saying in your whole hour, dude, help me to have shalom bayit. And as soon as I got home, something he was doing was like really peeving me. And then I just stop doing that. And then all of a sudden we get into this big fight. Oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? I literally was just praying to Hashem like that. I don't do that. And like in the moment I just lost. It's okay. You didn't lose the hour of Ibodedut. That made a dent. And now that you made an error, that's also okay. Rabbi Nachman says even your dissents are sent from heaven. Don't internalize the dissent. Just take it on the chin and say, Hashem, okay, I'm going to have another chance after this. It's the spiritual journey is not one of perfection. A lot of our suffering is coming from this Western mindset that we have. That if I don't do something perfect, it means I'm a loser. If I do not excel in this thing, I don't get an A+ right now, it means I'm stupid. That's wrong. It's so damaging. And we already know this because we feel this. Yet we never heard somebody tell us that in a compelling way, that if I just do okay when I'm trying my best, that's actually incredible. Yeah? But the truth is that's the reality. That's the reality. If in this instant, I have a fight with my spouse, but instead of blowing up and making it last for hours, we fight for 20 minutes. That is a huge hatzlacha. That's a huge success. You did great. That's amazing. Now, according to my old mindset, I'm still a failure. Why? Because I thought I wasn't supposed to get angry. No, you have to go through a desert. And then you have to go through a field. And you have to go through a forest before you can even get out of those spaces. You need to go through 9 months of pregnancy before you can give birth. You cannot go from 1 month to 8 months. You have to go through those months in between. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you that you went from first trimester to second trimester. That is how you give birth. It's okay. It's good. It means you're progressing. Okay? Fed, does that answer your question?
It was Julie, but yeah, he's here too.
Oh, okay, that was your second question. Baruch Hashem, you guys are a couple and therefore you're one and the same. So I'm going to assume it was also in Fed's heart as well. I think I missed the connection. How do we know that in this story the lost princess is specifically only the lost point of the tzaddik inside of each of us? Why can't the lost princess... Oh, so sorry. I didn't make that clear, I guess. The lost princess is the general loss of Emunah and Simcha in one's life. The point of the tzaddik, that is the Mishneh Lamelech. That is the second to the king who goes searching for her. Meaning, what's the part of you that is yearning to feel truly happy with your avoda, with your closeness to Hashem, with your service of Hashem? What's the part of you that's yearning to really have emunah, to not freak out every single time something doesn't go my way, to not lose my mind every single time something happens that I didn't expect, to actually be happy even despite my struggles and my difficulties? What is the part of me that's yearning and compelling me to want to grow spiritually, to be able to experience the emunah? That is the point of the tzaddik within me. Why is that point of the tzaddik within me yearning to do that? So what we learned is because the king is in tremendous pain. Because Hashem is in so much pain over the fact that we don't feel Him, that we don't believe in Him, that we don't believe that He's good, that we don't believe that He cares, that we don't believe that we matter. And Hashem is so pained over this. There's a point within your soul, which is your nakudat tzaddik, the point of the tzaddik within you, who then strives as a result of seeing how much pain Hashem is in, to then try and heal your broken heart, to try and elevate general loss of emunah from exile, and to lift up your joy and your emunah from the dust. Does that answer your last question, Julie? Or Fed? Or both?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. I feel better now that I feel so ignorant. Baruch Hashem, me too. The Rabbi Nachman says the highest level of knowing is knowing you don't know anything. And there's a pasuk that Shlomo Melech says, I try to acquire wisdom and yet I'm far from it. So Rabbi Nachman says this was the wisest man who ever lived. This is not very motivating. The wisest man who ever lived said, I tried my whole life to acquire this thing and I still feel far from it. So Rabbi Nachman is saying, no, that's not what he's saying. I acquired the highest level of wisdom to know that I'm far from it. That is the highest level of wisdom, to know you don't know. It's an amazing, incredible thing. Rabbi Nachman actually says the closer that a person gets to Hashem, the further that they realize that they are. Now, while we at our level feel like that's very daunting and that's depressing, that's only because we feel far from Hashem. And therefore what we need now is to feel close. But when a person actually feels close, it's really beneficial that he realizes that Hashem is unlimited. And therefore, there's an unlimited amount of steps of growth that I can have, and I know that I don't know. So why is he an old Zaidi if we can't get old? That's a great question. So his oldness comes from his newness, okay? How did he get to the point that he's an elder of wisdom? An elder of wisdom can only happen if you're trying to accrue it anew every single day. How does a person become a zaken? How does a person grow a beard? He needs to grow it out a little bit every day. What if he decides not to today? So then he doesn't have a very long beard. He doesn't get very old. So when he's saying it's a sur to get old, he means that it's a sur to remain where you are. You have to keep moving towards closeness to Hashem every day, whether that means holding your ground or making steps forward. If you continuously do this on a daily basis, then you get to experience Hashem's Ancient of Days, which is his full elevated compassion for you, that you realize now after all is said and done, that truly, truly, truly everything that Hashem did for you was from the ultimate level of empathy and compassion. That comes from this accrual of wisdom over time. That's why, again, it said about Avram Avinu, that he accrued length of days, right? It could have just said he passed away, he expired, but no, it said that he had length of days. It said that Tzaremenu lived 100 years, 20 years, 7 years. Why not just say she lived 127 years? Because it's to show you she did not waste a day. Every day Sarah was trying to get closer to Hashem, no matter what that looked like. Even if she was kidnapped by Paro, or she was mamish close to the tzaddik, whatever was going on in that day, but she didn't give up. So as a result of that, she achieved length of days at the end of her days. And when a person does this over the course of time, they get to experience Hashem's ultimate compassion, which is called length of days. Can we fall from the forest level to the desert? Absolutely. But the truth is, what's likely happening is you've actually moved to a new desert. Okay, and this is very important to know. There are times when a person has felt themselves go through these stages, and then they feel themselves fall back to literally not feeling anything, not wanting anything, not feeling compelled to do anything. Rabbi Nachman actually speaks about how you can literally go through stage and stage and stage to the point that you are hell-bent on visiting a real tzaddik, on getting to, let's say, Uman, to be by Rabbi Nachman, to be by his kever for Rosh Hashanah. And literally you're standing there and you lost all motivation to actually grow closer to Hashem. What is that? Rabbi Nachman says totally normal. Why? Because essentially what's happening is you reached a completely new stage of your soul. And when you get to a higher level of your soul, you need to go back again through forest, field, desert. However, it's at your new level. So even though what it feels like is that you didn't make any progress to begin with, you're wrong. And this is what Rabbi Nachman would say to his students all the time when they came crying to him. I don't understand. Before I met you, I mamish was just like doing things by rote. I hated spirituality. I was contemplating leaving it. And now after being by you and your students, I literally, all I care about is wanting to be close to Hashem. And I'm talking to Hashem all the time. And I'm screaming to Him. And I'm crying to Him. And saying Tehillim even without understanding it. And I'm learning like so much more than I ever did before. And this is what I want. I really wanted this. And now I just feel like I went completely back. I'm struggling with that taiva that I used to struggle with, that I haven't struggled with for years. I completely overcame this, I thought, and now I'm struggling again with it. Right? I stopped looking at women that were not my wife a long time ago, and now I'm looking again. I stopped overeating for like months and months and months, and now like I'm ravaging my fridge. What is that? So they came to him crying like I didn't do anything, and Rabbi Nachman would rebuke them. And he said, what are you talking about? You're doing amazing. You're doing incredible. You're doing so good that you're struggling again with this thing. What he was alluding to is the fact that you need to constantly revisit those challenges that you have naturally each time that you move to another level. And when you know this, you can actually get excited from it because you know that if you're back in the if you're back in the desert, it's because you actually have moved beyond the forest of this level of your soul. You're now to the next level of your soul, and you need to go back in the desert in this space. So now what's the avoda in this place? I need to start yearning again. Start yearning again. Like it said about the Baal Shem Tov, that he literally got to the point that he forgot everything. And so what did he do? He just started saying Aleph Bet, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, because that's all he could do. Now, he might think to himself, my gosh, I lost everything. I spent years and years helping Jewish people, toiling day and night to learn Hashem's Torah, to talk to Hashem in the forest, to achieve higher and higher levels of Kedusha and Tahara. And now I mamish feel nothing and I don't even remember anything I learned. So what did he do? He just said Aleph Bet. Because he knows, I got to another level. I got to go back to cheder again. I got to go back to kindergarten, preschool. It's okay. It's good. Not to go into despair because of this. Okay. The rest of the questions, if you could please post them in the Chabura group. Good questions. But I want to give people a chance to digest what we're talking about. Some very important inyanim that came out of today's class. And I hope that everybody takes this week and thinks about where they're at. Am I in the desert? Am I in the field? Am I in the forest? Do I feel like I'm back in one of those places? Now that I know that really it's because I'm doing so good. So now I can let myself feel motivated because of it. And I need to ask Hashem to help me to get further the next stage. And to remember that this whole thing is a birthing process. It takes time. It's not a problem that it takes 9 months to give birth. That's part of giving birth. And to enjoy and to appreciate and to try and soak up each moment instead of waiting for it all to end, appreciate the beauty of being in the desert. Most people did not choose to leave the comforts of Western civilization to go live in a desert. You did that in 2022. You crazy person. You should feel amazing. You're doing mitzvot and you don't feel anything from it. Gavalt, you're a tzaddik, yeah? And then all of a sudden, like, you got to the point that you actually feel things from it. A little bit, shtickle, something. Oh my gosh, this is incredible. You should feel so good. I felt a little bit of something today, something from what I did. Okay, feel good about it, enjoy it. And then Bezrat Hashem, you're going to get to the place when it's just sweet. You're looking forward to Hippolytic. You're looking forward to Tefillin. You're looking forward to Shabbat. You're looking forward to doing mitzvot, right? That's incredible. That's great. Feel good about it, but know that you haven't done anything yet, and you got to run. You got to run and get to the next page. But you should know that when you run and go to the next stage is going to end you back in a desert. But it's not the same desert, even though it feels like the same desert. You have moved, the best mashal for this is a video game. If anybody played video games, you constantly have to go back and face the same boss, but it's more difficult each time. There's a higher level of difficulty. It's the same thing spiritually. You struggled with anger, that's your biggest struggle, right? You might have gotten to the point where literally you're completely unperturbed by anything, right? You really work on amunah, you work on overcoming your anger, you work on acting empathetically instead, even when you do feel angry, you become a master of it. And then I don't know what happened one day, I literally became insanely angry about everything. This guy's breathing next to me. What are you doing? You can't take it. So thank God, you literally reached a new madrega of your soul. You have to now work with your anger again. But it's not a source of despair. It's a source of excitement. I'm doing great. Got to keep going. Keep going. Okay? Everybody have an amazing week.